If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is Politically Speaking.
The veto session of the Missouri legislature is less than 2 weeks away. With over $500 million worth of budget vetoes to consider, it is possible that some lawmakers will attempt to overturn some of the decisions made by Governor Mike Parson. On this episode of Politically Speaking, State Senator Karla Eslinger joins the show for the first time. Eslinger, a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, gives her perspective on the budget, as well as her thoughts on education, foreign ownership of farmland, and the 2024 election. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, the definitive show about Missouri politics.
My promise to St. Louis was that I would do the absolute most for each and every person, starting with those who have the very least.
What I wanted to do was look and see what other states are doing.
We have to be willing to change those laws, that they are balanced and they affect everybody equally.
As somebody that grew up in the St. Louis area, in North St. Louis County, I didn't know any lawyers growing up.
We got to find long-term solutions to make government better, but also to be able to provide services to people.
I don't want to leave that federal money that we've been leaving all these years on the table.
We need to be spending this money to take care of Missourians.
I thought we accomplished a lot this year, but a lot more needs to be done.
Welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, State House and Politics reporter Sarah Kellogg. Joining me via Zoom in St. Louis is my co-host, St. Louis Public Radio's political correspondent,
Jason Rosenbaum.
And joining us via Zoom, she represents the 33rd District in the Missouri Senate,
Karla Eslinger.
Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you on. And since this is your first time on Politically Speaking, we have a lot of questions for you. But I first want you to kind of describe your district. Tell me who you represent.
Absolutely. You know, I represent 7 counties for Senate District 33. Douglas, House, Ozark, Shannon, Stone, Taney, and Texas County. And I believe that's 7. I live right in the middle of them in a small town called Wasola in Ozark County. You know, I'm blessed to represent what I call the heart of the Ozarks. My district runs from Table Rock Lake to, if people are familiar, to Echo Bluff State Park. And if you've ever been down here and have visited and enjoyed our state parks and our hunting and fishing and Great Lakes, you will agree with me that it's probably the most beautiful part of the state.
Since you are a first-time guest, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did before you were elected to the Missouri General Assembly.
Okay, well, a lot of people I've noticed like to label me as a superintendent because of my time as a superintendent of schools at Ava and West Plains. But I like to just consider myself the old school lady who helps students and helps people. I've been a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, and I worked for both the state at the DESE, the state level, and also the federal government. And my job has always been to try to go in and fix these wicked problems that are very difficult and trying to deliver on this promise that all kids deserve a quality educational experience. You know, I've never thought I ever would be involved in politics. It was just not anything that it was my destiny, really. It wasn't anything I planned for. A good friend of mine who I totally just absolutely respect, Maynard Wallace, he approached me about running when Lyle Rowland was just about termed out. And I thought that, you know, if they have this faith in me, and I have to tell you, I promised that when it came my time to both of these gentlemen that I would run, and I keep my promises. So I just thought, well, if I can be half the statesman those two are and fill those big shoes, then I can do some real good for my community. And it's been a great experience for me. I have been able to get some things done that I'm very proud of, and I look forward to even serving them as long as possible.
You only ended up serving a single term in the Missouri House. Why were you so eager to make your way to the General Assembly's upper chamber in 2020?
You know, frankly, I'm not a young person, so I've retired a couple of times, and I just knew that for me to really be able to do the work that I know needs to be done in our area, I needed to be in the Senate. And so that is why I decided to jump, and I wanted to make sure that my time of service is really going to have the biggest impact.
This is your third year in the Missouri Senate, which is a place with a lot of intra-party conflict as you know, we've both been in that chamber. What has been your strategy navigating what can be, a pretty cantankerous chamber?
It's true, it can. And I'm sure most of us have watched those late night where people are just tired and had it and their nerves are frazzled. But my the way that I've operated as far as my entire professional career is I have everything I's dotted, T's crossed. I make sure that there is some really good communication and understanding of what I'm trying to do before I ask the question of can I or would you support it. I do a lot of back kind of preparing work, front loading work to make sure that nobody feels surprised or nobody is unaware of what's in my legislation. So I think that being prepared and being ready to answer any question and be able to spend the time with each one of those senators or anybody else who has an interest in my legislation, I think that's what has caused me to be successful. I just do my homework.
I was literally about to say, it sounds like you do your homework, and I think you would agree, yeah?
Absolutely. The thing is that most people, when you work with them directly and they understand your purpose and what it is you really want to get done, there's times when I can help them with an amendment they want to put on my legislation, but I take the time to give them a good answer as to why not, or as to why it will fit and what we can do together.
It seems like the Senate this year was able to avoid a lot of the drama of 2022 until the last week or two of session. How did you see this year as different than the other years that you've served?
I think what I noticed is one, leadership, obviously. We had Caleb and he's great. And we had Cindy with us this year. And Cindy just provided that, I think, just a push in we're not playing games. We want to get some good work done. And if you come to the floor and you're not prepared, or if you come and you just want to cause havoc, you probably aren't going to get much time. I think she just handled herself very well, and she provided opportunities for most of us. And she really did look to see where is it that she can help the whole. She didn't push her own agenda. I just think that we had good leadership this year, and I think that really helped us.
Kind of in a way, session isn't quite done yet. We still have veto session. You are a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and so you probably took great interest in Governor Mike Parson vetoing more than $555 million worth of items. What was your general reaction to that move?
I'm sure everybody probably has something they wish that didn't get vetoed. I'm sure Representative Cody Smith and Senator Huff, they had projects that they championed as well that would benefit Southwest Missouri that actually got vetoed by the governor. A project that I was passionate about that received a veto was an environmental study for Highway 63 in Texas County. And it was going to be the first step in trying to do a 4-lane to push some more industry and some more economic development into which is actually some of the poorest counties in our state. And the reason for it is because of infrastructure. But I really think, I think the governor did the best job he could do to balance those priorities for the state while making sure we have a balanced budget that doesn't come back and, kind of bite us in 5 or 10 years. Will the Senate override any of the governor's vetoes? Was that part of your question?
Well, yeah, that you almost
you
read our
segued well.
minds, Senator.
Really? That's the next question I always get. So.
Well, I mean, it's kind of,
and
Sarah has explained this a number of times. It's very likely that the House may override some vetoes, but it does seem that it really will be up to Senator Huff about which vetoes he wants to override, because it's his bills that he's handling. And I think you were there when the whole kerfluffle over Senator Moon trying to override something over Senator Hageman caused a lot of consternation. So it seems that it's going to be really in Senator Huff's court. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. And it should be that way. We always, that's one of the underlying pieces about the way we do business is that you own your bill. That's your bill, and you can offer a veto, or you can offer amendments to it. But you have control of the bill. You can decide it goes forward or it doesn't. So, yeah, I think that it is up to Lincoln Huff, and but when I look out across the entire budget, there's some good things that happened all across. So we can't really say that good things didn't happen. It did, but I think you have to really decide: is it something that that you can demonstrate that your project is that was vetoed has to be done now, or can you really push and talk to Lincoln about the benefit of that your particular piece that you're concerned about that was vetoed, does it benefit the entire state, not just one particular thing, or can it actually wait until next year, or maybe it can't? Those are things I think Lincoln's probably having conversations with folks about if they come to him and want him to support a veto. I would assume.
So, you kind of alluded to this, but there were one of the reasons Governor Parson issued so many vetoes was that he was concerned that the state surplus is not going to last forever, and there needs to be some sort of cushion if there's an economic downturn. What do you make of that argument?
Sure. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I know that in my own business that I run, or even, personal accounts or whatever, and I run some pretty large school systems, you want to be able to have a balance that helps you weather those storms. You have reoccurring costs every year of things that you've got to be able to fund. And in the state, we're looking at, police and schools and health services, all kinds of things across the state that we want to make sure that we do have consistent quality programs. So I think it's smart to think about that. Some people thinking, okay, what's enough is the question. Is this many millions and millions, or that many millions and millions? We know that our economy is always on a pendulum. You're going to be doing well, then you're going to be doing not so well, and then in between. So it is good fiscal conservativeness for us to stop and take just a bit of a pause and make sure that each thing that we are promoting for that particular budget year is something that we feel that we can totally afford and is not going to jeopardize the future of our state.
In addition to talking about the state surplus, Parsons said a tax cut for Social Security benefits and state pensions played a role in his decision to veto things. Do you think that bill will have a net negative impact on the state's bottom line?
I think we have plenty of opportunity because of the fiscal conservativeness that we have to see that if we get to a point where the revenues coming in does not support the cost of running the state, then we can make some adjustments. But I don't believe so. I think that anytime that you can reduce those kinds of taxes on our constituents, on the people of the state, and I don't think that they were huge. I think that that's a good thing. And like I said, with this kind of a balance, you get more of like a runway into, or do we need to do something, or are we going to be in trouble? Because I'm sure, as you do with your own personal finance and we do as a business, you forecast what you think is going to happen. You do estimates on revenues coming in, and you truly monitor that budget several times throughout the year. So no, my answer would be no. I don't think that we have jeopardized the fiscal health of the state by those tax cuts.
The main part of that pension / Social Security bill, though, was the ability for counties, if they vote either through a referendum or through a county commission, to freeze property taxes for seniors. Now, this has caused a great deal of consternation in St. Louis County. I'd be interested to hear how some of your counties have approached this possibility and whether any of them have taken advantage of it yet.
I'm not aware, Jason, that any have taken advantage of it yet. I know there's a lot of conversation going on, various county assessor meetings and this and that, and they're really trying to just understand exactly how they can do it and put this program in place in their counties so that they do it well. I haven't had a lot of consternation from them, except they want more guidance from the Department of Revenue or whatever as to the questions that are kind of laying out there, right? Like, so how do you prove your home after, and when does it trigger? Does it trigger when you turn 65, or is there any kind of, what is that when you go back and say, well, when I was 65, I paid this much tax? There's all those kinds of little loose ends that are associated with this, which I would understand St. Louis folks having consternation over it. But I do think that in the long run, this will be of value to our seniors, because think about the other side of this. They cannot control the inflation of their property at times, and so they'll be in their homes, and then their property assessments go way up, and then they're not able, because they're on fixed income or whatever, to actually cover those costs. So that's something we have to look at, and I think this bill has done that. But the one good thing is that nobody's going to do it unless they vote for it locally, and so hopefully they wait until they get the little nuances about their particular area or region kind of figured out before they vote for it to go through.
Is there anything in particular that you think the legislature will be interested in doing with the remaining surplus? Could it be socked away to prepare for less fruitful economic times, or is there another major project worth spending it on?
My interest, and we had a little trouble on broadband, right? When we first us hooking up to have this interview. I want us to have in my district. I like for us to really look at the infrastructure pieces that drive our ability to get to and from work, move our products, and really makes my district viable and more viable for economic development. But overall, I don't have not heard of anything in particular statewide. Nothing like the I-70 improvements or some of those big ticket items. I haven't had any conversations with folks about that. I think that now we're seeing a dip in our revenues a little bit. It's not any less than what we had projected, but I think that we need to kind of watch and see how things are going to go. And I think it's very smart of us not to try to plan to spend all, but try to be, like I said, pretty conservative about what we do with those dollars. First time, it's probably one of those things where you don't have this opportunity often, so you have to be very careful with it.
I want to move on to education, which is kind of an area that there wasn't a lot of movement this year, was education policy. I know the Senate had a very, very big bill that was considered for like an evening and then it went away. There's been some chatter about some Republicans wanting to expand children's savings accounts or charter schools. What are your expectations about what education-related bills could be considered next year?
Well, as far as what can be considered, this is what I think about 5 years now. I've gone to session to see what's happening and whether in the House or the Senate, and considering what could be, I keep seeing the same characters show up. Right? We have open enrollment, you have ESAs, you'll have expansion of charter, or you'll have some kind of a push to put a little more funding into schools or to revamp the formula, or name one. But I think the bottom line is that any kind of legislation that we put forward, we have to ask ourselves the question, and this is something I think sometimes we don't do as well as we should. Is this good for all kids? And so I think that is something we have to be careful about. 2 years ago, we were able to get some pretty significant legislation with Senate Bill 681. And it looked at that, answering that question that as a state, are our kids literate? That was a huge thing. When I asked that question, I hear this data about how the kids can't read. And I'm like, well, I don't believe that, one. And the second part of it is, give me some more data. And how do you know? And tell me exactly, how do we know that our kids are literate? So that bill really pushed the Department of Education to do those things and to give us that data. It was a bipartisan approach of tackling, to me, one of the most significant issues of our state, is that we've got to be able to say to our public, to our parents, that our kids are able to read at this level. And if they're not, what are we doing about it? So that to me was really important. And Sarah, you mentioned that last year we had several education bills moving at the end of the session. And, those bills included things that were around open enrollment, parent bill of rights, I think statutorily increasing the minimum of teacher salaries, and making sure our seniors are prepared for the workforce. But unfortunately, as we all know, that we weren't able to tackle any of those. They were kind of like put all in one sack, and it just didn't go anywhere. But next year, I do expect um, for us to have some of the same kinds of things being discussed and considered. But one thing that I have an interest in that continues to pop up, and it's something that I really would like to learn more about, and I'm excited about the work they've done, and it's called the Success Ready School Network. And they have a new proposal, which is actually just approved by the state board. And it allows 20 of our school districts, public school systems, to use what's considered an innovation zone waiver for part of the end of year assessments. And it gives them this opportunity to design and pilot like a new APR, annual performance report, that would focus on this personalized competency learning based kind of thing, which just really drives down to what the student needs and what the student needs next. Personalized is the main word there. We know every kid's different, and so why aren't we as a state? And so I like the idea that we provide opportunities for individual school districts to focus on a personalized learning kind of thing instead of this kind of a cut and paste testing. Sarah, back in several years ago, I've retired a couple of times. One of my jobs was I worked across this nation, and I used creating personalized learning environments for many health-trained teachers and leaders, and how that looks, what that looks like in the classroom, how you prepare your teachers to facilitate that kind of learning. To me, it is where the parents are more informed more often as to what their kids are doing, what they need to do next, gives that information to teachers. You don't wait for that end of year test to decide whether you got the job done or not. It's just something I'm looking forward to watch how they progress, and that is a result of that innovation zone legislation that was passed a couple of years ago.
We have found your wheelhouse as far as a topic that obviously you're super enthusiastic about, which makes sense given your background. Do you think that there's a split between what rural Republican legislators want in terms of education policy and what suburban lawmakers may push for?
There is. I think that choice is more of a thing that we hear more about in urban areas. But I like the idea that it doesn't matter if it's a charter or a scholarship account or a public school or a private school. All rural, urban, whatever it is, all parents want their kids to have the best opportunity and to have the most high quality programs accessible to the children. So I think that sometimes rural parents maybe don't see the options they have, or urban parents don't see the community and the small school kind of thing that happens in a rural area. It's two different places. And just like I said before, we are so different across our state. We need to be able to listen to our communities and listen to our parents and see what it is that those particular groups would like to have and what they need to provide quality education for their kids, whether it's urban, rural, or whatever. So I think it's different environment, yes, but the tools to educate, I think, could be applied anywhere.
School just started here in St. Louis, and I'm sure in your neck of the woods. And, this is only my observation as a parent of two kids who are in public schools, but it does seem like we're getting some breathing room from the whole uproar around the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's pretty clear that the pandemic has had a massive impact over how kids have been able to learn, especially young kids. Do you think that this could be the year where maybe some of those kids that are behind because of the pandemic are going to be maybe catching up more rapidly?
I think you have a crystal ball there, Jason, because that's exactly what I'm looking at and seeing. And hallelujah, the COVID thing is in our rearview mirror, and we're able to move forward. I've visited several schools and have done where I get to go in and visit with staff as they start their school year. And I can tell you that we have some very excited and motivated educators. I've just visited a charter school in St. Louis, and I was just floored how happy the kids were. The teachers are energized. People are ready to go. And I really think you're going to see positive gains across our state when it comes to what kids can do and what they know and do. So yes, I think that, to me, I think hold on to your hat, because we saw some pretty scary numbers the last year or so, looking at that dip, that loss of learning. But I think we're going to see some pretty substantial gains this next year.
And I'm gonna knock on wood. I think this desk is wood, so I'm knocking on wood right now. But if there is a significant uptick of COVID-19 cases, how do you think schools will handle the potential outbreaks differently from 2021 and 2022, especially when the vaccine is available for kids? There are therapeutics that could be deployed for high risk people. It doesn't seem like the strategy of like completely shutting down schools and going virtual is really viable anymore. So have you talked with sort of educators about what their plans are if, God forbid, there is another large uptick in COVID throughout our state?
Right. And I really hope that desk you knocked on is wood, so we for sure have that good luck with us. But I just think that the main thing that we were dealing with when it came to COVID was the unknown, the fear, the what do we do, how do we do it, and we have gone through so many learning lessons through COVID that I think that even if we did have a bit of an uptick or whatever, we were just so much better prepared for how we can truly handle the situation, make it the best, safest place for kids, but still continue that opportunity for learning that we know is so essential. I think we're just, it's just maybe another opportunity or whatever you want to say to show that we do learn from the past.
We need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
And we're back on Politically Speaking with our guest, State Senator Karla Eslinger. Let's get back into it. In my opinion, it's never too early to talk about the upcoming session, even though it is months away. 2024 is an election year. Do you expect more difficulties in passing major legislation since so many people, including yourself, will be on the ballot?
Right. I chair what's called government accountability. Now was the old professional whatever it was about certification and professional licensure. So I'm looking at things and about around that compacts, things that we can maybe loosen up a little bit of the red tape around licensing, so that we can get folks to work. I think that the IP piece is going to come back. This is not like a major issue in my district that I've heard from my constituents. Well, mainly what they want is they want their voice to be heard. So I have to rephrase that and say, it is an issue that they are concerned about, but the specifics around how to do it, that is where we always kind of get bogged down. So the thing that I know is that if you stand out in front of Walmart in Avon, Missouri, and you came to collect signatures to legalize recreational marijuana, they didn't come from West Plains or Gainesville. Okay, so that probably didn't happen. So that's what they see. They see something that we would not have supported that has occurred, and so they have an interest in it. They want to know how their voice can be heard.
Do you think that because it is an election year, it's just going to be harder to get stuff done because people are running for things and they want their moment on the House floor, the Senate floor? How do you think productivity is going to be?
We'll just kind of sit back and watch, I guess. My forecast is that I really hope that we identify some priority items that we really want to get across the line, that we work together and get these things done. But in reality, we know that we have that situation where somebody really wants a piece of their legislation to be front and center because it's going to be important for their reelect or for their next job. So reality is, there's going to be a lot of grandstanding. There's going to be probably a lot of people who want to push their personal agenda over what is good for the state. I think you guys have watched it long enough to know that we are looking at several of our state. Our senators are running for statewide. Of course, there's a few of us that are up for reelect. It's going to be one of those years that we don't get as much done, maybe. But I am optimistic. I really want us to be able to get some of these things over the finish line.
To go back to the issue of amending Missouri's Constitution, we've asked many lawmakers if they expect to take up the effort to make the Constitution more difficult to amend, and most say yes, even after a similar plan failed recently in Ohio. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing concern about the results of Ohio. Like, okay, how can we learn from that? How can we make sure that we don't go down that path? Because obviously that was a lose. I don't know exactly. I haven't actually looked to see what language they had or what the outcome was. I just know it didn't pass. So that is part of the conversation. I expect us to have more conversation as a caucus when we go for our caucus after veto.
So you are in a area of the state that does have agriculture as a dominant industry, and we talked about this during the show. This may be an issue that is more relevant in North Missouri than South Missouri, but there was a lot of talk on the Senate floor and the House floor about a quote unquote ban on foreign ownership of farmland. And I'll tell you in a second why I think I'm putting the ban in quotes, but do you expect that issue to reemerge what role do you think senators like yourself, who represent highly agricultural areas, are going to play in steering that debate, even if you personally are maybe not the lead person?
Right. Well, if you stand in the go to church and talk to folks, or go down to the grocery store, and if you can ask anybody in my district, what do you think about foreign ownership of farmland? And of course, they're like, oh no, that'd be horrible. We don't want China owning our land, and when we don't want that to happen. And I understand that, and I support that. The part that I think is the way we get bogged down is, so what do you do? How do you do this? When we think about large animal operations or ag industry, these have board members that are varied right across the board. They could be from different countries, for that matter. And so, how do you operationalize the idea that that person on that board cannot have an interest or a vested interest in or gain from whatever their company is doing? I mean, it can be that far fetched. I think that we need to protect our farmland from foreign ownership, absolutely. But I think you have to get real about how do you operationalize it to where we don't create more of a problem than what we have.
Right. And this is why I put the word ban in quotes.
Yeah.
And I want to just, and I've mentioned this on other shows, but when we talk about China owning our farmland, it's because a company called Smithfield was bought by a Hong Kong-based company in 2013, and they have a pretty sizable footprint in Missouri, which I think it's gotten smaller because some of the operations are closing, unfortunately. But any bill is not going to go to Smithfield's land and confiscate it. This is really just saying that they can't expand beyond what they already have. So basically, and this maybe seem like a linguistical complaint, but I don't think it's really a ban then. It's really just a freeze, because there's still going to be farmland owned by a Hong Kong-based company, even if this bill passes. Am I totally off base here, or is this kind of your view as well?
It is my view as well, but I do think that there are people who look at that and they really have the opinion that that company should not own farmland, and that you've got to realize that that's a huge industry, that's a big economic driver in our state. So how do you actually get real about this? It's one of those things where it could be as ridiculous as, if I had to run every sale of land through the Department of Ag, then I have to ask permission for somebody to buy my land so they can check them out to make sure they're not a non-U.S. citizen. It could be that nutty. So I think it's important for us to be careful. I don't want to where we end up with a bunch of our land being owned overseas or whatever it is. But I don't think that it's realistic for us to think that we're going to go back and be retroactive and say, hey, Smithfield, give up half your holdings. That's not going to happen.
You actually just brought up a point that I've never thought of before. Like, how would you even be able to enforce restricting existing companies from trying to expand their footprint? Like, how would that actually be enforced? Like, I know the Department of Agriculture in Missouri is probably a well-run agency, but it's probably not omnipresent, and it probably doesn't know every single transaction that's going on. What can you kind of address that point? Because I know that in addition to being an educator and a legislator, I think you also know a lot about farming. So I'd be interested in that point too.
Well, and that's the thing, is that when I've got a buyer and I want to be able to sell some land or be able to purchase some land, I don't want to wait for a state agency to tell me it's okay, right? That, oh yeah, we've checked it out, you're fine, go ahead and sell it or buy it or whatever. But that piece of this with how do we do it, and that conversation of who monitors it, how do we check it, that was actually some of the conversation that we had just on the sidebar, some senators, as we were looking at this legislation, trying to consider how do we operationalize it. That's something that I always do, Jason, is I think about, yeah, it's a good idea. We want to protect our farmland 100%, but we got to be careful about how, so that we don't end up again with more problem than what we started out with.
All right, we're going to move on to the last section, which is about the 2024 election. How do you see Republicans faring in next year's elections?
Well, I live in probably one of the most Republican portions of our state, and I think we have a record that we're moving our state forward in the right direction. And I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish. And So I think the future is bright for Republicans in my part of the state and the state overall.
Do you think that, to kind of shift a little, do you think that the primary between Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, and State Senator Bill Eigel for governor, how do you think that's going to shake out?
We will have to wait and see. I hate to forecast that. I do know that Jay Ashcroft comes in with some great name recognition. You can't hardly pick up a paper or tweet or whatever without Eigel being all over it. But I do think that Senator Kehoe has worked. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe has worked very, very hard, and he has a proven track record that he is a leader and can get some things done. And I just see practically everywhere I go, there are people that approach me about they saw him, they talked to him, whatever. So I think he's going to be a pretty strong contender. When it first came up, people were just pretty much sure that Jay Ashcroft had the race because of obviously his father's such a great hero for the state. But I really think that we're going to have a pretty good race, and I think that Kehoe is someone that will probably be successful.
Some glowing words for Lieutenant Governor Kehoe there. Is he who you're supporting, or if not, which candidate do you think have an advantage?
I do support Lieutenant Governor Kehoe. I'm very proud to say so. And of course, that puts me in a position where, there's folks who don't. There's folks who support the other candidates. And I think that as mature people who are trying to do the best we can to work towards the next generation and taking care of them, everybody has a right to an opinion. And I think that we all should respect each other's.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Senator Eslinger, for joining us on the show. Politically Speaking is a product of St. Louis Public Radio, which is a part of the University of Missouri St. Louis. And you can follow all of our work at stlpr.org. Senator Eslinger, where can people find you on the internet where you want to be found?
Of course, you can always go to the Karla.Eslinger at senate.mo.gov. We watch that account very closely. And just send me a text. Send me an email. I'll be glad to respond and get back to you. So sure.
All right. Well, until next time, so long.